Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. What is a friend? A single soul dwelling in two bodies, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. Hope is a waking dream. No great mind has ever existed without a touch of madness. Happiness depends upon ourselves. Anybody can become angry, that is easy, but to be angry with the right person, and to the right degree and at the right time, and for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power, and is not easy. Excellence is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, and intelligent execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. A friend to all is a friend to none. Wishing to be friends is quick work, but friendship is a slow ripening fruit. Happiness is the meaning and the purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. Those who educate children well are more to be honored than they who produce them, for these only gave them life. Those the art of living well. Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. Those who know, do. Those that understand, teach. To perceive is to suffer. He who is overcome, his fears will truly be free. The educated differ from the uneducated, as much as the living differ from the dead. Whosoever is delighted in solitude, is either a wild beast or a god. I count him braver, who overcomes his desires than him, who conquers his enemies, for the hardest victory is over self. Poverty is the parent of revolution and crime. The aim of art is to represent, not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance. It is not enough to win a war, it is more important to organize the peace. I wondered if the life that was right for one was ever right for two. The high-minded man must care more for the truth than for what people think. Pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. To write well, express yourself like the common people, but think like a wise man. One swallow does not make a summer, neither does one fine day. Similarly, one day or brief time of happiness does not make a person entirely happy. Learning is not child's play. We cannot learn without pain. Man is by nature a social animal, an individual who is unsocial naturally, and not accidentally, is either beneath our notice, or more than human. Society is something that precedes the individual. Anyone who either cannot lead the common life, or is so self-sufficient as not to need to, and therefore does not partake of society, is either a beast or a god. Man is by nature a social animal, an individual who is unsocial naturally, and not accidentally, is either beneath our notice, or more than human. The wise man does not expose himself needlessly to danger, since there are few things for which he cares sufficiently, but he is willing, in great crises, to give even his life, knowing that under certain conditions it is not worthwhile to live. He is of a disposition to do men service, though he is ashamed to have a service done to him. To confer a kindness is a mark of superiority, to receive one is a mark of subordination. He does not take part in public displays. He is open in his dislikes and preferences. He talks and acts frankly, because of his contempt for men and things. He is never fired with admiration, since there is nothing great in his eyes. He cannot live in complacence with others, except it be friend. Complacence is the characteristic of a slave. He never feels malice, and always forgets and passes over injuries. He is not fond of talking. It is no concern of his that he should be blamed. He does not speak evil of others, even of his enemies, unless it be to themselves. His carriage is sedate, his voice deep, his speech measured. He is not given to hurry, for he is concerned about only a few things. He is not prone to vehemence, for he thinks nothing very important. A shrill voice and hasty steps come to a man through care. He bears the accidents of life with dignity and grace, making the best of his circumstances, like a skillful general who marshals his limited forces with the strategy of war. He is his own best friend, and takes delight in privacy, whereas the man of no virtue or ability is his own worst enemy, and is afraid of solitude. Happiness does not consist in amusement. In fact, it would be strange if our end were amusement, and if we were to labor and suffer hardships all our life long merely to amuse ourselves. The happy life is regarded as a life in conformity with virtue. It is a life which involves effort, and is not spent in amusement. A tyrant must put on the appearance of uncommon devotion to religion. Subjects are less apprehensive of illegal treatment from a ruler, whom they consider God-fearing and pious. On the other hand, they do less easily move against him, believing that he has the gods on his side.
Most of the important things in the world have been accomplished by people who have kept on trying when there seemed to be no hope at all. If you want to conquer fear, do not sit home and think about it. Go out and get busy. Fear does not exist anywhere except in the mind. The successful man will profit from his mistakes and try again in a different way. Most of us have far more courage than we ever dreamed we possessed. If you want to be enthusiastic, act enthusiastic. Take a chance. All life is a chance. The man who goes farthest is generally the one who willing to do and dare. Do the best as you can. When fate hands you a lemon, make lemonade. People who manage to take advantage of the mistakes that he did, and will try again to perform in a different way. Feeling sorry for yourself, and your present condition, is not only a waste of energy but the worst habit you could possibly have.
Develop success from failures. Discouragement and failure are two of the surest stepping stones to success.
First ask yourself what is the worst that can happen? Then prepare to accept it. Then prox to improve on the worst. Those convinced against their will are of the same opinion still. Our fatigue is often caused not by work, but by worry, frustration and resentment. Remember that unjust criticism is often a disguised compliment. Instead of worrying about what people say of you, why not spend time trying to accomplish something they will admire?
When one door of happiness closes, another opens, but often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one which has been opened for us. I would rather walk with a friend in the dark than alone in the light. The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart. Life is either a daring adventure, or nothing at all. Death is no more than passing from one room into another. But there's a difference for me, you know, because in that other room I shall be able to see. One can never consent to creep, when one feels an impulse to soar. Although the world is full of suffering, it is full also of the overcoming of it. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, vision cleared, ambition inspired, and success achieved. Keep your face to the sun, and you will never see the shadows. Be of good cheer. Do not think of today's failures, but of the success that may come tomorrow. You have set yourselves a difficult task, but you will succeed if you persevere, and you will find a joy in overcoming obstacles. Remember, no effort that we make to attain something beautiful is ever lost. The most pathetic person in the world is someone who has sight but no vision. What we once enjoyed and deeply loved we can never lose, for all that we love deeply becomes a part of us. The highest result of education is tolerance. Never bend your head. Hold it high. Look the world straight in the eye. I long to accomplish a great and noble task, but it is my chief duty to accomplish small tasks as if they were great and noble. Science may have found a cure for most evils, but it has found no remedy for the worst of them all, the apathy of human beings. What I'm looking for is not out there, it is in me. People don't like to think. If one thinks, one must reach conclusions. Conclusions are not always pleasant. A bend in the road is not the end of the road, unless you fail to make the turn. We could never learn to be brave and patient, if there were only joy in the world. Literature is my utopia. Everything has its wonders, even darkness and silence, and I learn, whatever state I may be in, therein to be content. Happiness does not come from without, it comes from within. Security is mostly a superstition. It does not exist in nature, nor do the children of men as a whole experience it. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure, or nothing. Many persons have a wrong idea of what constitutes true happiness. It is not attained through self-gratification, but through fidelity to a worthy purpose. Face your deficiencies and acknowledge them, but do not let them master you. Let them teach you patience, sweetness, insight. Relationships are like Rome, difficult to start out, incredible during the prosperity of the Golden Age, and unbearable during the fall. Then, a new kingdom will come along and the whole process will repeat itself until you come across a kingdom like Egypt, that thrives, and continues to flourish. This kingdom will become your best friend, your soulmate, and your love. Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. When we do the best that we can, we never know what miracle is wrought in our life. or in the life of another. For 3 things I thank God every day of my life: thanks that He has vouchsafed me knowledge of His works, deep thanks that He has set in my darkness the lamp of faith, deepest thanks that I have another life to look forward to, a life joyous with light and flowers and heavenly song. Literature is my utopia. Here I am not disenfranchised. No barrier of the senses shuts me out from the sweet, gracious discourses of my book friends. They talk to me without embarrassment or awkwardness. The few own the many because they possess the means of livelihood of all. The country is governed for the richest, for the corporations, the bankers, the land speculators, and for the exploiters of labor. The majority of mankind are working people. So long as their fare demands, the ownership and control of their livelihoods, are set at naught, we can have neither men's rights nor women's rights. The majority of mankind is ground down by industrial oppression in order that the small remnant may live in ease. For, after all, everyone who wishes to gain true knowledge must climb the hill difficulty alone. And since there is no royal road to the summit, I must zigzag it in my own way. I slip back many times, I fall, I stand still, I run against the edge of hidden obstacles, I lose my temper and find it again and keep it better, I trudge on, I gain a little, I feel encouraged. I get more eager and climb higher and begin to see the widening horizon. Every struggle is a victory. One more effort and I reach the luminous cloud, the blue depths of the sky, the uplands of my desire. In a word, literature is my utopia. Here I'm not disfranchised. No barrier of the senses shuts me out from the sweet, gracious discourse of my book friends. They talk to me without embarrassment or awkwardness. The things I have learned, and the things I have been taught seem of ridiculously little importance compared with their large loves and heavenly charities. I believe that God is in me as the sun is in the color and fragrance of a flower, the light in my darkness, the voice in my silence. So long as you can sweeten another's pain, life is not in vain. Life is a succession of lessons, which must be lived to be understood. Keep your face to the sunshine, and you cannot see the shadows. It's what the sunflowers do. 4 things to learn in life: to think clearly without hurry or confusion, to love everybody sincerely, to act in everything with the highest motives, to trust God unhesitatingly.
Love itself draws on a woman nearly all the bad luck in the world.
Charities, I believe that
some things are best learned in calm, others in I prefer to be foolish when I feel like it, and be accountable to nobody.
Sweeten another's pain,
I do not see you as you really are, Joseph, I see you through my affection for you.
Live to be understood. Keep your face to the sunshine,
and that's what makes men happy, believing in the mystery and importance of their own individual lives.
Think clearly without hurry or confusion, to love There was a new kind of strength in the gravity of her face, and her colors still gay. Trees were so rare in that country, and they had to make such a hard fight to grow, that the history of every country begins in the heart of a man. There are no shortcuts to any place worth going. It's awfully easy to rush into a profession you don't really. If we never arrived anywhere, it did not matter. Between that earth and that sky I felt erased, blotted out. Faith is the strength by which a shattered world shall emerge into light. I began my studies with eagerness. Before me I saw a new world opening in beauty and light, and I felt within me the capacity to know all things. In the wonderland of mind I should be as free as another, with sight and hearing. Its people, scenery, manners, joys, and tragedies should be living tangible interpreters of the real world. The lecture halls seemed filled with the spirit of the great and wise, and I thought the professors were the embodiment of wisdom. But I soon discovered that college was not quite the romantic lyceum I had imagined. Many of the dreams that had delighted my young inexperience became beautifully less, and faded into the light of common day. Gradually I began to find that there were disadvantages in going to college. The one I felt and still feel most is lack of time. I used to have time to think, to reflect, my mind and I. We would sit together of an evening and listen to the inner melodies of the spirit, which one hears only in leisure moments, when the words of some loved poet touch a deep, sweet chord in the soul, that until then had been silent. But in college, there is no time to commune with one's thoughts. One goes to college to learn, it seems, not to think. When one enters the portals of learning, one leaves the dearest pleasures, solitude, books and imagination, outside with the whispering pines. I suppose I ought to find some comfort in the thought that I am laying up treasures for future enjoyment, but I am improvident enough to prefer present joy to hoarding riches against a rainy day. Things away from home often look better than they are. When the words of some loved poet touch a deep, one painful duty fulfilled makes the next plainer, and easier. College isn't the place to go for ideas. I only want impossible things, she said roughly. The others don't interest me. Life was so short that it meant nothing at all, unless it were continually reinforced by something that endured, unless the shadows of individual existence came and went against a background that held together. The two friends stood for a few moments on the windy street corner, not speaking a word, as two travelers, who have lost their way.
You've gotta dance like there's nobody watching, love like you'll never be heard, sing like there's nobody listening, and live like it's heaven on earth. Never regret a day in your life. Good days bring you happiness, and bad days give you experience. Time is what we want most, and what we use worst. Better 3 hours too soon, than a minute too late. Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions. You can either experience the pain of discipline, or the pain of regret. The choice is yours. Words can inspire, thoughts can provoke, but only action truly brings you closer to your dreams. Do something today that your future self will thank you for. Be strong enough to let go, and wise enough to wait for what you deserve. Whatever you are, be a good one. Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. When the pain of an obstacle is too great, challenge yourself to be stronger. Don't be upset when people reject you. Nice things are rejected all the time by people who can't afford them. Be the change that you wish to see in the world. Don't be afraid to give up the good to go for the great. The difference between who you are and who you want to be is what you do. Never stop learning, because life never stops teaching. Take the risk, or lose the chance. Success is going from failure to failure, without losing your enthusiasm. You were born to win, but to be a winner, you must plan to win, prepare to win, and expect to win. Your mind is powerful. When you fill it with positive thoughts, your whole world will change. Stop being afraid of what can go wrong, and start being positive about what can go right. When thinking about life, remember this: no amount of guilt can change the past, and no amount of anxiety can change the future. A negative mind will never give you a positive life. Everything you can imagine is real. Impossible is just an opinion. Don't stop when you are tired. Stop when you are done. A winner is a dreamer who never gives up. Your only limit is your mind.
Reading maketh a full man, conference a ready man, and writing an exact man.
So many people who love you. Don't focus on the people who don't. Winter lies too long in country towns, hangs on until it is stale and shabby, old. Don't be afraid of being different. Be afraid of being the same as everyone else. Freedom so often means that one isn't needed anywhere. Loving yourself starts with liking yourself, which starts with respecting yourself, which starts with thinking of yourself in positive ways. Loving yourself isn't vanity, it's sanity. If you live for people's acceptance, you will die from their rejection. I am mine, before I am ever anyone else's. The only person who can pull me down is myself, and I'm not going to let myself pull me down anymore.
If people hold on to the belief, then there goes skepticism. However, if people have already started to hold on to skepticism, then there goes the belief. Some books should be tasted, some devoured, but only a few should be chewed and digested thoroughly. If a man will begin with certainties, he shall end in doubts, but if he will be content to begin with doubts, he shall end in certainties. Hope is a good breakfast, but it is a bad supper. A wise man will make more opportunities than he finds.
Read not to contradict and confute, nor to believe and take for granted, nor to find talk and discourse, but to weigh and consider. Some books are to be tasted, others to be swallowed, and some few to be chewed and digested. That is, some books are to be read only in parts, others to be read, but not curiously, and some few to be read wholly, and with diligence and attention.
There is no exquisite beauty without some strangeness in the proportion. Imagination was given to man to compensate him for what he is not, a sense of humor to console him for what he is. Begin doing what you want to do now. We are not living in eternity. We have only this moment, sparkling like a star in our hand and melting like a snowflake. Man prefers to believe what he prefers to be true. Age appears best in four things: old wood to burn, old wine to drink, old friends to trust and old authors to read. Money is a great servant but a bad master. Wonder is the seed of knowledge. It is a sad fate for a man to die too well known to everybody else, and still unknown to himself. The job of the artist is always to deepen the mystery. In order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present. Reading maketh a full man, and writing an exact man. And, therefore, if a man write little, he need have a present wit, and if he read little, he need have much cunning to seem to know which he doth not. Ipsa scientia potestas est. Knowledge itself is power. It is impossible to love and be wise. Read not to contradict and confute, nor to believe and take for granted, but to weigh and consider. In taking revenge, a man is but even with his enemy, but in passing it over, he is superior. There are two ways of spreading light, to be the candle or the mirror that reflects it. If we are to achieve things never before accomplished, we must employ methods never before attempted. The general root of superstition, namely, that men observe when things hit, and not when they miss, and commit to memory the one, and forget and pass over the other. The less people speak of their greatness, the more we think of it. Champagne for my real friends, real pain for my sham friends. Some books are to be tasted, others to be swallowed, and some few to be chewed and digested, that is, some books are to be read only in parts, others to be read, but not curiously, and some few are to be read wholly, and with diligence and attention. Philosophy when superficially studied, excites doubt, when thoroughly explored, it dispels it. There is no comparison between that which is lost by not succeeding and that which is lost by not trying. God has, in fact, written 2 books, not just one. Of course, we are all familiar with the first book he wrote, namely Scripture. But he has written a second book called Creation. Reading maketh a full man, conference a ready man, and writing an exact man.
The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. The unexamined life is not worth living. I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. There is only one good, knowledge, and one evil, ignorance. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Wonder is the beginning of wisdom. Strong minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, weak minds discuss people. To find yourself, think for yourself. Education is the kindling of a flame, not the filling of a vessel. By all means marry. If you get a good wife, you'll become happy. If you get a bad one, you'll become a philosopher. He who is not contented with what he has, would not be contented with what he would like to have. Be slow to fall into friendship, but when you are in, continue firm and constant. If you don't get what you want, you suffer. If you get what you don't want, you suffer. Even when you get exactly what you want, you still suffer, because you can hold on to it forever. Your mind is your predicament. It wants to be free of change, free of pain, free of the obligations of life and death. But change is law, and no amount of pretending will alter that reality. Sometimes you put walls up not to keep people out, but to see who cares enough to break them down. The children now love luxury, they have bad manners, contempt for authority, they show disrespect for elders, and love chatter in place of exercise. Children are now tyrants, not the servants of their households. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and tyrannize their teachers. No man has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical training. It is a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable. The secret of happiness, you see, is not found in seeking more, but in developing the capacity to enjoy less. Know thyself. Let him who would move the world first move himself. Contentment is natural wealth. Luxury is artificial poverty. Death may be the greatest of all human blessings. Employ your time in improving yourself by other men's writings, so that you shall come easily by what others have labored hard for. The hour of departure has arrived, and we go our separate ways, I to die, and you to live. Which of these two is better only God knows. The only good is knowledge, and the only evil is ignorance. Do not do to others what angers you have done to you by others. I am not an Athenian or a Greek, but a citizen of the world. Every action has its pleasures and its price.
The real threat is actually not when the computer begins to think like a human, but when humans begin to think like computers. The three hardest tasks in the world are neither physical feats nor intellectual achievements, but moral acts: to return love for hate, to include the excluded, and to say, I was wrong. When I hear somebody sigh, life is hard, I am always tempted to ask, compared to what? A winner knows how much he still has to learn, even when he is considered an expert by others. A loser wants to be considered an expert by others before he has learned enough to know how little he knows. The whole purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. Regret for the things we did can be tempered by time. It is regret for the things we did not do that is inconsolable. The real danger is not that computers will begin to think like men, but that men will begin to think like computers. The difference between patriotism and nationalism is that the patriot is proud of his country for what it does, and the nationalist is proud of his country no matter what it does. The first attitude creates a feeling of responsibility, but the second a feeling of blind arrogance that leads to war. The time to relax is when you don't have time for it. The generality of mankind is lazy. What distinguishes men of genuine achievement from the rest of us is not so much their intellectual powers and aptitudes as their curiosity, their energy, their fullest use of their potentialities. Nobody really knows how smart or talented he is until he finds the incentives to use himself to the fullest. God has given us more than we know what to do with. An idealist believes the short run doesn't count. A cynic believes the long run doesn't matter. A realist believes that what is done or left undone in the short run determines the long run. Never take life seriously. Nobody gets out alive anyway. Our dilemma is that we hate change and love it at the same time. What we really want is for things to remain the same but get better. It's surprising how many persons go through life without ever recognizing that their feelings toward other people are largely determined by their feelings toward themselves, and if you're not comfortable within yourself, you can't be comfortable with others. Patriotism is proud of a country's virtues and eager to correct its deficiencies. It also acknowledges the legitimate patriotism of other countries, with their own specific virtues. The pride of nationalism, however, trumpets its country's virtues and denies its deficiencies, while it is contemptuous toward the virtues of other countries. It wants to be, and proclaims itself to be, the greatest, But greatness is not required of a country, only goodness is.
Happiness is a direction, not a place. At its highest level, the purpose of teaching is not to teach, it is to inspire the desire for learning. Once a student's mind is set on fire, it will find a way to provide its own fuel.
If a small thing has the power to make you angry, does that not indicate something about your size? It's odd, and a little unsettling, to reflect upon the fact that English is the only major language in which I is capitalized. In many other languages U is capitalized and the I is lowercase. The commonest fallacy among women is that simply having children makes them a mother, which is as absurd as believing that having a piano makes one a musician.
What is much harder to handle is the sense that you have to live up to the mark someone else has set for you. The grades become too important. The competition too frantic. The fear of disappointing those who believe in you turns into an overwhelming nightmare. And it is desperately unfair to the boy. He cannot live his parents' life over again for them. He cannot make up for their own lacks, their own unfulfillments. He cannot carry their torch, only his own.
Much as a teacher may wince at the thought, he is also an entertainer, for unless he can hold his audience, he cannot really instruct or edify them.
The most worthwhile form of education is the kind that puts the educator inside you, as it were, so that the appetite for learning persists long after the external pressure for grades and degrees has vanished. Otherwise you are not educated, you are merely trained. 90% of what we believe has nothing to do with the process of thought, but comes instead from the four sources of family inheritance, individual temperament, national culture, and economic self-interest, and while we cannot wholly cast off these shackles, we should at least recognize their cramping and distorting influence upon the free process of thought.
Self-discipline without talent can often achieve astounding results, whereas talent without self-discipline inevitably dooms itself to failure.
It is a curious psychological fact that the man who seems to be egotistic is not suffering from too much ego, but from too little. When the ego is strong and well developed, there is no nagging need to impress others by money, by rudeness, or by any other show of false strength.
Isolation always perverts. When a man lives only among his own sort, he soon begins to believe that his sort are the best sort. This attitude breeds both the arrogance of the conservative and the bitterness of the radical. It's odd that the people who worry whether certain plays are morally offensive so rarely worry about the moral offensiveness of war, poverty, bigotry. Nobody can be so amusingly arrogant as a young man who has just discovered an old idea and thinks it is his own. But in terms of psychological time, most of us are still living in centuries past, stirred by ancient grudges, controlled by obsolete prejudices, driven by buried fears. Take away grievances from some people and you remove their reasons for living. Most of us are nourished by hope, but a considerable minority get psychic nutrition from their resentments, and would waste away purposelessly without them.
There are some things you learn best in calm, and some in storm. The heart of another is a dark forest, always, no matter how close it has been to one's own. The world is little, people are little, human life is little. There is only one big thing, desire. Where there is great love, there are always miracles. Whatever we had missed, we possess together the precious, the incommunicable past. Most of the basic material a writer works with is acquired before the age of 15. It's all very well to tell us to forgive our enemies can never hurt us very much. But oh, what about forgiving our friends? People live through such pain only once. Pain comes again, but it finds a tougher surface. That is happiness, to be dissolved into something complete and great. When it comes to one, it comes as naturally as sleep. The fact that I was a girl never damaged my ambitions to be a pope or an emperor. Now I understood that the same road was to bring us together again. Whatever we had missed, we possess together the precious, the incommunicable past. Let your fiction grow out of the land beneath your feet. Men travel faster now, but I do not know if they go to better things. The old man smiled. I shall not die of a cold, my son. I shall die of having lived. Some memories are realities and are better than anything that can ever happen to one again. What was any art but a mold to imprison for a moment the shining elusive element which is life itself, life hurrying past us and running away, too strong to stop, too sweet to lose. Success is never so interesting as struggle. The soul cannot be humbled by fasts and prayer. It must be broken by mortal sin to experience forgiveness of sin and rise to a state of grace. Otherwise, religion is nothing but dead logic. People can be lovers and enemies at the same time, you know. There was nothing but land, not a country at all, but the material out of which countries are made. That is happiness, to be dissolved into something complete and great. Artistic growth is, more than it is anything else, a refining of the sense of truthfulness. The stupid believe that to be truthful is easy. Only the artist, the great artist, knows how difficult it is. She had certain thoughts which were like companions, ideas which were like older and wiser friends. I wondered if the life that was right for one was ever right for two. No one can build his security upon the nobleness of another person. Only a woman, divine, could know all that a woman can suffer. There are only 2 or 3 human stories, and they go on repeating themselves as fiercely as if they had never happened before. The idea of you is a part of my mind. You influence my likes and dislikes, all my tastes, hundreds of times when I don't realize it. You really are a part of me. Paris is a hard place to leave, even when it rains incessantly, and one coughs continually, from the dampness. Only solitary men know the full joys of friendship. Others have their family, but to a solitary, and an exile his friends are everything. If there were no girls like them in the world, there would be no poetry. One cannot divine nor forecast the conditions that will make happiness. One only stumbles upon them by chance, in a lucky hour, at the world's end somewhere, and hold fast to the days. Winter lies too long in country towns, hangs on until it is stale and shabby, old and sullen. Don't be afraid of being different. Be afraid of being the same as everyone else. Success can take the place of that. Freedom so often means that one isn't needed anywhere. Prayers said by good people are always good prayers. Ah! The terror and the delight of that moment, when first we fear ourselves. Until then we have not lived. The dead might as well try to speak to the living as the old to the young. The more observing ones may have seen, but discerning people are usually discreet and often kind, for we usually bleed a little before we begin to discern. There is often a good deal of the child left in people who have had to grow up too soon. Love itself draws on a woman nearly all the bad luck in the world. Some things are best learned in calm, others in storm. I prefer to be foolish when I feel like it, and be accountable to nobody. I do not see you as you really are, Joseph. I see you through my affection for you. And that's what makes men happy, believing in the mystery and importance of their own individual lives.
There was a new kind of strength in the gravity of her face, and her colors still gave her that look of deep-seated health and ardor. Trees were so rare in that country, and they had to make such a hard fight to grow, that we used to feel anxious about them, and visit them as if they were persons. The history of every country begins in the heart of a man or a woman. There are no shortcuts to any place worth going. Hungry for culture than New York. Pittsburgh was the birthplace of my writing. It's awfully easy to rush into a profession you don't really like, and awfully hard to get out of it. If we never arrived anywhere, it did not matter. Between that earth and that sky I felt erased, blotted out. I did not say my prayers that night. Here, I felt what would be would be. Faith is the strength by which a shattered world shall emerge into light. But the most important thing was that one should not pretend to be what one was not. People have to snatch at happiness when they can, in this world. It is always easier to lose than to find. Things away from home often look better than they are. One painful duty fulfilled makes the next plainer, and easier. With the same quotation, the end is nothing, the road is all. College isn't the place to go for ideas. The world's hard hand, need, even more than children do, a woman's tenderness. I only want impossible things, she said roughly. The others don't interest me. Life was so short that it meant nothing at all, unless it were continually reinforced by something that endured, unless the shadows of individual existence came and went against a background that held together. The two friends stood for a few moments on the windy street corner, not speaking a word, as two travelers, who have lost their way, sometimes stand and admit their perplexity in silence. A man long accustomed to admire his wife in general, seldom pauses to admire her in a particular gown or attitude, unless his attention is directed to her by the appreciative gaze of another man. Religion is different from everything else, because in religion seeking is finding. The land belongs to the future. A pioneer should have imagination, should be able to enjoy the idea of things, more than the things themselves. Oh, that's the beauty of the rose, that it blossoms and dies. I have sometimes thought that his bursts of imaginative talk were fatal to his poetic gift. He squandered too much in the heat of personal communication. What was any art but an effort to make a sheath, a mold in which to imprison for a moment the shining, elusive element which is life itself? It's by understanding me, and the boys, and mother, that you have helped me. I expect that is the only way one person ever really can help another. Our tree became the talking tree of the fairy tale, legends and stories nestled like birds in its branches. The end is nothing, the road is all. He knew he would always remember her, standing there with that expectant, forward-looking smile, enough to turn the future into summer. I only could knew the school books, said he, died in the wilderness of a broken heart. More than him has done that, said Antonia sadly, and the girls murmured assent. I wanted to walk straight on through the red grass, and over the edge of the world, which could not be very far away. It was to him a very strange and perplexing place, where people wore fine clothes, and had hard hearts. Since then she had changed so much in her thoughts, in her ways, even in her looks, that she might wonder she knew herself, except that the changes were all in the direction of becoming more and more herself. Nothing is far and nothing is near, if one desires. The world is a little, people are little, human life is a little. There is only one big thing, desire. And before it, when it is big, all is little. But I can't help feeling scared, when I think how I will miss you, more than you will ever know. She began to wonder whether she would not do better to finish her life alone. What was left of life seemed unimportant. Schools are not meant to make boys happy, see Chile, but to teach them to do without happiness. You must not begin to fret about the successes of cheap people. After all, what have they to do with you? I had killed a big snake. I was now a big fellow. The glorious transmutation of autumn had come on, all the vast Canadian shores were clothed with a splendor never seen in France, to which all the pageants of all the kings were as a taper to the sun. One is best in one's own country. Doctrine is well enough for the wise, Jean, but the miracle is something we can hold in our hands and love. He was entirely rid of his nervous misgivings, of his forced aggressiveness, of the imperative desire to show himself different from his surroundings. He felt now that his surroundings explained him. How easy it would be to dream one's life out in some cleft in the world. Her husband had archaic ideas about jewels. A man bought them for his wife, in acknowledgement of things he could not gracefully utter. The qualities of a second-rate writer can easily be defined, but the first-rate writer can only be experience. It is just the thing in him, which escapes analysis, that makes him first-rate. "Oh, he's an old friend from the West," said Eden easily. "I won't introduce you, because he doesn't like people. He's a recluse. Goodbye." The spark in his eye, which is one's very self, caught the spark in hers that was herself, and for a moment they looked into each other's natures. We agreed that no one, who had not grown up in a little, prairie town could know anything about it. It was a kind of Freemasonry, we said. Her secret? It is every artist's secret passion. That is all. It is an open secret, and perfectly safe. Like heroism, it is inimitable in cheap materials. It was no wonder that her son stood tall and straight. She was a rich mine of life, like the foundation of early races. "And I advise ye to think well," he told her. "It's better to be a stray dog in this world than a man without money. I've tried it both ways, and I know. A poor man stinks, and God hates him." "You never really knew a man," he said, "until you saw him die. There is no God but one God, and art is his revealer. That's my creed, and I'll follow it to the end, to a hotter place than Pittsburgh if need be." Avarice, he assured them, was the one passion that grew stronger and sweeter in old age. It must have been the scarcity of detail, in that tawny landscape, that made detail so precious. "Don't love it so well, Clark, or it may be taken from you. Oh, dear boy, pray that whatever your sacrifice may be, it be not that." "Have the last word, ma'am," he said cheerfully. "It's a lady's privilege." Miracles surround us at every turn, if we but sharpen our perceptions to them.
We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. A good decision is based on knowledge, and not on numbers. Thinking, the talking of the soul with itself. There is no harm in repeating a good thing, truth is the beginning of every good to the gods, and of every good to man. Knowledge without justice ought to be called cunning rather than wisdom. The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. To be conquered by yourself is of all things most shameful and vile. Wealth and poverty, one is the parent of luxury and indolence, and the other of meanness and viciousness, and both of discontent. An empty vessel makes the loudest sound, so they that have the least wit are the greatest babblers. Opinion is the medium between knowledge and ignorance. If a man neglects education, he walks lame to the end of his life. All men are by nature equal, made all of the same earth by one workman. Books give a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything. The measure of a man is what he does with power. The direction in which education starts a man will determine his future in life. Wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools because they have to say something. Do not train a child to learn by force or harshness, but direct them to it by what amuses their minds, so that you may be better able to discover, with accuracy, the peculiar bent of the genius of each. Bodily exercise, when compulsory, does no harm to the body, but knowledge which is acquired under compulsion obtains no hold on the mind. Ideas are the source of all things. When two friends, like you and me, are in the mood to chat, we have to go about it in a gentler and more dialectical way. By more dialectical, I mean not only that we give real responses, but that we base our responses solely on what the interlocutor admits that he himself knows. Knowledge becomes evil if the aim be not virtuous. A library of wisdom is more precious than all wealth, and all things that are desirable cannot be compared to it. Whoever therefore claims to be zealous of truth, of happiness, of wisdom or knowledge, must become a lover of books. No one is more hated than he who speaks the truth. And what, Socrates, is the food of the soul? Surely, I said, knowledge is the food of the soul. The untrained mind keeps up a running commentary, labeling everything, judging everything. Best to ignore that commentary. Don't argue or resist, just ignore. Deprived of attention and interest, this voice gets quieter, and eventually just shuts up. False words are not only evil in themselves, but they infect the soul with evil. Writing is the geometry of the soul. Necessity is the mother of invention.